Hi, I'm Lori Riggs, speech pathologist with the National Association for Child Development and co-creator of the NACD Home Speech Therapist speech apps. And I'd like to take you through the Speech Therapy for Apraxia-Words app and kind of show you how this is put together and how you might use it with your clients or your child. Whether you're using a tablet like a Nook or a Kindle or an iPad, it all works the same. So I'm just going to go through and demonstrate it on the iPad, but everything applies to the Android tablets as well. The Apraxia-Words app is a follow-up to the original NACD speech app, which is called Speech Therapy for Apraxia. And so the Words app really is just taking it to the next level. So the original speech app is syllable-based, working on consonant vowel syllables by consonant groups. And this current one that we're talking about today is word-based. So if you are just getting started working on motor planning for speech, then you might want to start with speech therapy for apraxia. Also, if you are using this just for articulation purposes and you're working on newly taught phonemes, then again, you may want to start with the first one, speech therapy for apraxia, so that you can work at the syllable level. But speech therapy for Apraxia-Words is working at the word level as a follow-up to the 8 difficulty levels in the hierarchy of the first app. So there are a few things to understand about this app in order to use it correctly. First of all, the title is for apraxia, so obviously it is intended for working on motor planning for speech, and the hierarchy is set up as a progression to address that. But certainly there are other applications of this that are appropriate as well. So if you are just working on straight articulation for particular phonemes, this provides good stimulus items for that. Or also, because it does work with CVC words, consonant, vowel, consonant, you can use it for addressing phonological processes. So if you are practicing being able to get the initial consonant on a word or getting the final consonant on a word, all of these words would work for practicing that. Also, vowel differentiation. With that, I would start with the first app and then move on to this. Or if you're working on oral motor goals for speech, so such as you're working on bilabial sounds and trying to get the lips together, because these words are organized according to place of articulation, then it's really easy to use that for that purpose as well, working on a specific group of sounds. So the first thing to really understand about how this is organized is what I mean by place of articulation and the groups of sounds. For speech therapists who are using this app, this is old news. But if you are a parent using it with your child, you may not really have ever given this any thought. So I'm going to go ahead and explain this as we're using this with therapists and non-therapists alike. So as you look at the different consonants, they are grouped together according to where in your mouth you produce those sounds. And so for the purposes of this app, we have used 3 different types of consonants. And again, by type, I'm referring to place of articulation. The first being bilabial sounds, and as the name implies, bilabial, 2 lips. These are the sounds where you use your lips mostly together in order to produce the sound. So p, b, would be bilabial sounds where you actually put your lips together. Now we've included w, or the W sound, in this group because it does use the 2 lips, but obviously not closed. So it's still considered a bilabial sound. The next group of sounds would be alveolar sounds. Your alveolar ridge is that bumpy gum ridge behind your front top teeth. And so for alveolar consonants, you're using your tongue tip and it comes into contact with your alveolar ridge. So t, d, those would be alveolar sounds. N, the N sound, is also an alveolar sound. The third group that we use in the app are the velar consonants, and these would be sounds that are produced in the back of the mouth. So for K and G, k, g, you are using the back of your tongue. It goes up and makes contact with the roof of your mouth in the back, so against the velum or the soft palate. So the name velar consonants. We've also included h or an H sound in with the velar consonants. It's not articulated the same way, obviously, as k and g, but it does come from the back of the mouth. It's just airflow. There's no articulation, so to speak, of the tongue. So those are the three groups that we've used. Now there are obviously other speech sounds, other groups of consonants, but for the purpose of this app, those are the three that we're using. So then the words themselves are grouped by patterns of articulation. So rather than just having words that start with a particular consonant type, what we're looking at is the pattern within the word. So what type of consonant is at the beginning of the word and what type of consonant is at the end of the word. So that actually gives us 9 different combinations for word groups. So when you have a word that has the same place of articulation for the initial consonant as it does for the final consonant, that's easier to produce than if you're having to move from one place to another. So when it comes to motor planning for speech, words that we'll call BB, so a bilabial sound in the beginning, bilabial sound in the end, that will be easier to produce than a word that starts with a bilabial sound and then moves to, say, a velar sound at the end. So within the app, the word groups are kind of listed roughly in an order of difficulty so that the words that are more easy to produce are going to be at the top of the list, and then as you move down, it becomes a more difficult pattern. So bilabial would be a word that starts with PB or M, and then a word that has PB or M at the end, whereas AA or alveolar would have TD or N at the beginning, TD or N at the end. So if you take bilabial sounds, alveolar sounds, and velar sounds and put together all the different combinations of initial consonant and final consonant, then you end up with 9 different word groups. And so that's how the words in the app are organized. Okay, so once you understand how the word groups are set up, then within each word group, there are 8 different levels that you can move through. And these are levels of difficulty, and it's the same as in the speech therapy for Apraxia app, the syllable-based app. So if you're familiar with that one, it's the same type of progression in this one. So I will go through and show you each level, and we can talk about when to move on. So if you are just starting out, I would suggest starting with the first word group, and each time you start a new word group, go ahead and just start with level 1. In level 1, it presents each word by itself. So if you've chosen the bilabial group, then level 1 for that group will go through each one of the words that is in the group and just have it as a single word. So that's the easiest level. You only have to produce one word. Also, it gets the user familiar with the words and what the illustrations stand for. So always start at level 1. Now, in one sitting, if you have chosen a word group, you start at level 1, and your user is just doing great and they get through 1 and 2, then the next time you come back to that, you don't have to start at level 1 again. You can back up to any previous level just to review or for extra practice, but you can move on to wherever you were in that word group. It's just when you start a new word group, go ahead and start at level 1. So for the app, you simply touch the picture. You can turn the audio on or off. I suggest having it on so that you do have that input. And then you will probably also want to provide the model and say the word as well, so that the person that you are working with, child or adult, they get that visual input of you producing it. They hear you producing it, but you can have just the audio cue of the app in addition to that. Now, the idea is that they repeat the word that they've heard. Keep in mind, this is not a game that someone could sit and do independently. This is a therapy tool, and it just provides you with stimulus items. So it's going to be up to you to provide the feedback to the user regarding their production. So there's nothing about the app that's going to tell them if they produced it correctly or what they need to do to shape their production into a correct production. So that's what you're there for. You have to let them know that was great, or oops, let's try again, or remember to get your lips together, or whatever that input is that you need to provide. That is your job, and the app is simply going to give them the stimulus items. So be sure that this is not something that you're just handing to a child and having them go off for 10 minutes and practicing their speech app, because it really isn't going to provide much good to them if they don't have that feedback. Okay, so once you have said the word, then you just swipe the screen and it will take you on to the next word. And you can do that all the way through all of the words in that group. Now, when you get to the end of that level, you can decide whether to repeat the level or to move on to the next one. And that obviously is going to be a judgment call on your part. So if you go through all the words in level 1, it seems really easy. Your user, and I keep using the word user. I don't want to say child, because so many adults could benefit from this as well. So this is an app that could be equally appropriate for a child or adult. But anyway, you'll have to decide whether they've mastered a level and should go on to the next one, or whether you want to go back and repeat that. Level 2 has the same word, but 3 repetitions of that word. So it taxes their motor planning just a little bit more. And what you want is for the second production and the third production to be just as clear as that first production. So same as with the first level that I showed you, you'll just swipe and go on through, and it will take you to a different screen for each word. But again, you'll see 3 repetitions of that word. Okay, moving on to level 3. What you'll find in level 3 is 5 repetitions of the same word. And so again, a little harder than level 2, but still not too difficult. And by the way, you don't have to have gotten through all 8 levels for one word group before you go on to another group of words. So you might be at 2 different levels for 2 different word groups, or 3 different levels for 3 different word groups. You don't always have to be on the same one. So for the sake of variety, you may need to, in one sitting work on one group, and another sitting work on another group, and then just keep track of where they are for each individual group, so that when you go back to it, you remember which level to start on. Okay, for level 4, there will again be 5 words in the sequence. This time though, you'll have 4 of the same word in a row, and then for the 5th word, it's going to change to a different word, but it's still from that same group. So if you've been working on words that start with a bilabial, end with a bilabial, then that 5th word will be from that group, but it's not the same as the first word. So in this example, we have web and 4 times in a row, and then the 5th word changes to pop. So whereas we have, you know, w and a b at the end for web, now we have p and p, but still bilabial, bilabial. Level 5 is the same idea in that you have 2 words from the same word group, but this time you're alternating every other production. So in this example, we have mop and mom, so it just goes from one to the next, one to the next.
Mop, mom, mop, mom, mop.
So there are, you know, 2 different ways you can do this when you have the sequences of several words. If you need to, you can just play one word and have them say that, play the next word, have them repeat it, and so you go through each one individually and have them say each one as you're going through. Or if they're fine with it like that, then I would just go through, play the whole sequence, and then let them go through and say the sequence. They'll have the visual input there in front of them, so it's not like it's a memory task. They don't have to remember what they heard. But rather than having that pause in there of hearing the next word, now the responsibility is on them to be able to make that production. And it is a little bit more difficult from a motor planning viewpoint than it is doing each one more like an individual word. Okay, so that was level 5. For level 6, it is still 2 words from the same group, but this time it will be a random pattern. So each screen will have a different pattern. Now, because it is random, sometimes you'll end up with it alternating every other one. But in this case, we have 2 of the same. It changes to a different word in the middle, and then 2 of the same again.
Peep, peep, mom, peep, peep.
But then if I go to the next screen, it's a different pattern.
Pop, bib, pop, bib, pop.
Okay, but then when we get to level 7, again, we have a sequence of 5 words, but this time it's going to draw from 2 different word groups, and you don't have to choose the second group. The app will do that for you, but if you have been working on bilabial, bilabial, then the second group that is included in here is going to be one of the other groups that also starts with the bilabial sound. So in other words, the place of articulation for the initial consonant will be the same for each word. So if it's bilabial, bilabial, then the second group that is being pulled from would either be the bilabial alveolar group or the bilabial velar group. So it's that initial consonant that's going to remain the same. Not the actual phoneme, but the place of articulation. So that group of either bilabials or alveolars or velars. For level 8, it is simply a random combination within the sequence of 5 words of words from 2 different groups. So when you get to this level, you do need to choose your second group. So if you've only been working on one group of words, then I would, at this point, start working on a second group before you actually work all the way up to level 8. So in other words, let's say you've been working on the group of words that starts with a velar consonant, starts with a velar consonant, ends with a velar consonant. You'll go all the way through level 7, And then you'll pick a different group, work on that all the way up through level 7. Then you can work at level 8 because then you have 2 different groups to choose from. So if you've only been working on one group, you just go through 7 and then go back and start a new group. So in this case, I have been working on bilabial. So now I need to choose another group. I'm going to choose velar. And so my sequence now is going to be a combination of words, and it's a random pattern combination from those 2 groups.
Cock, cook, bib, cake, cog.
Okay. So I hope that that helps you understand how this is organized so that you can use it more effectively and more efficiently with your child or with your clients. You are free to contact me if you have specific questions, and my contact information is there for you on the screen. So please give us your feedback. Let us know if there is anything else that you would like to see that you would find useful. And you can find us on the web at nacd.org, and you can also find us on Facebook. Thank you.